This happened in the 80s in a well-to-do Bay Area suburb, and several family members were the architects of this malicious compliance. My dad and his cousins owned a large parcel of land, 10 acres, that was full of junk, piles of dirt and rocks, and a few abandoned vehicles beyond rusted out. Being the kids of real estate developers and entrepreneurs, they decided they wanted to build 2 office buildings, but their land was zoned for light industrial, and they needed it to be rezoned to commercial. So they filed the necessary paperwork and make the surrounding community aware of their plans. This is where the community gets worried that a sudden influx of cars during the day at office buildings would lower their quality of life, and starts protesting and sending letter threatening legal action if they proceed with the rezoning process. So my dad and his closest cousin/best friend get this idea to use the mostly useless lot for something that the neighbors and the community would really hate in order to make an office park seem reasonable by comparison. After hours of ideas are thrown around, they decide to build a massive go-kart track, as it falls under a light industrial zoning law loophole, and then they decide to go for the grand slam and make it a 24 hours go-kart track. The surrounding neighborhoods and community as well as the immediate neighbors were so vocal about this new venture that they began pleading with my dad and family members to reapply for the rezoning, and that they would all support an office park of the god-awful 24 hours go-kart track. Not being that vindictive, they restarted the process a week later to convert the site to a commercial office park. I was serving what seemed like a really nice man for a few hours while he waited for his date, who was in a party on our patio. Weird AF she didn't let him join, but okay. He had several beers and food. Because I was so frazzled from this corona situation, I told him the wrong beer special. I paid 2 off the first one myself for the mistake. Anyway, when the date finally sat with him at the bar, he had already cashed out his first tab with me and handed me a 5 saying, "This is for you, sweetie," and I thanked him. His date gets a glass of wine and he gets another beer. The girl asks to cash out on her drink and the man gets up to leave, so I give him his ticket too. He says, "I paid for it with that 5 I gave you." His date's face was literally grimacing face, at me. Thank God for me mask, because I was dumbfounded too. Just have a nice night, because I was so confused. He clearly gave it to me as a tip, but whatever. Literally, who does that? Just had my first Karen experience today. Setting: airport office building across the street from terminal. Cast: me, an airport IT field engineer, Karen in a black dress, sandals and no mask. This was today 5/24/2020, and 2 large handbags. Me, heading to terminal from administration building and sees lady that looks like a lost passenger and decides to chime in, "Ma'am, the terminal is on the other side of this garage." Karen: "But I need to get to Southwest. My flight leaves at 7:15. It's 7 o'clock. Me: "You'll be lucky to make it. It's on the other side of the garage and across the street. If you go to the counter, they'll help you rebook your flight." Karen: "But that doesn't help." Karen storms off downstairs to her car and drives to the other side whilst my colleague and I walk over to our service call in the terminal. Fast forward to approaching the bridge to the terminal. Karen starts running. Karen: "You could have helped." Me confused, as we don't work for any airline and have literally walked to the terminal faster than she drove. Me: "Sorry, but we're not with the airlines. There's nothing that we can do for you." Karen stops in shock with an expression that no one has ever given her a reason to her entitledness. Karen: "But I'm a customer, you should have helped." Flips me off. Me: "Nothing I can do for you, have a nice day." Karen: "How can you sleep at night with this?" Me: "Very soundly. Have a nice day." Karen rushes to the Southwest counter at 7:10, in which she is advised she missed her flight. We tend to our service call and witness Karen sitting near the Southwest counter bench. In my years of doing any type of customer service, this has to be not only the funniest karma I've ever been a part of, but the first time I've been cussed out because it's literally not my job. DL, Dr. Karen arrives at the airport admin building at 7 o'clock for her 7:15 flight and cusses me out for giving her directions to terminal and how to rebook. At my old store, the owners wouldn't enforce closing times. They felt this would cause customers to talk badly about them, and they would lose customers and sales. Never mind that these people always stayed at least 30 minutes past closing and almost never bought anything. If they did, it was a 5-bob. The owners still expected us to perform all of our closing duties, off the clock, if aught would be incurred. For the record, we collectively refused to do so and were prepared to walk off the job if they tried to make us. The owners might have sucked, but my co-workers were great. 7 minutes before closing, a woman breezily entered, uttering the standard lie that she would just be a minute. The entire 45 minutes that she window shopped, she talked about working at one of the other stores in the mall, and didn't it suck when people stayed after closing? She said all this like it was small talk. Lucky for us, one of the cool managers was in duty. Despite it being against company expectations, she finally said that we had to lock the doors. The woman tried to say she'd just be another minute, but my manager walked her to the exit. Of course the cheerful demeanor completely evaporated and, as she departed, she screamed, "This is horrible customer service. I am never shopping here again." My manager said with a faint apologetic smile, "I'm sorry you feel that way," and locked the doors. Did I mention she didn't buy anything? So a couple months back I was looking for a job and I got an interview with this company. They offered a real good salary and good benefits. I was qualified for the job and I was super excited to interview. So I get to the interview and it's a group interview. For whatever weird reason, they asked us all kinds of questions, most related to the actual job, and everything was going fine. Then they start asking us all these dumb questions, like what would you do if a coworker tried to argue with you, and all kinds of behavioral questions, I guess. I am a very sarcastic person and I found all of these questions so dumb and ridiculous, I was rolling my eyes hard. I could see the back of my skull, mentally of course, and was giving smart-ass responses in my head to cope. And here comes the flip up. They ask us what would you do if two of your co-workers got into a fist fight? To which I instantly reply, film and shout world star. It just slipped out before I could even think. The interviewer was not impressed. Like, at all. She asked me to leave the interview room and that I clearly am not taking this seriously. Oh well. On to the next adventure. That's it. Thanks for coming to my Tifu talk. TLDR, I made a joke without thinking when I was asked a question on an interview for a job I wanted and ended up getting kicked out. Edit, fixing a few typos. This happened about 10 years ago. I live in Edinburgh, Scotland's capital city. It sits on the coast and has a few nice areas on the waterside. One area called Wardy Bay is not the prettiest but has nice views across the water, so the view is very important to the residents. It sits between a large harbour and large docks, both of which have large areas of infilled or reclaimed land, important later. Somehow, I ended up added to a large distribution list for Wardy Bay residents. I wrote to them a few times to ask to be removed, but they ignored my requests. Initially this wasn't too much of a hardship as there were typically only 2 or 3 Karens who would use the list on a regular basis and I just blocked messages from their email addresses. Then it all changed. One of the residents spotted a survey ship in the water in front of the houses and jumped to the conclusion that someone must be planning to fill in the gap between the harbor and docks to reclaim the land for building purposes. Well, the group emails exploded in volume, with unfounded rumor, accusations, personal attacks against local politicians and against the company that owns the harbors and docks in the area, Fourth Ports. Emails actually intended for me were lost in an avalanche of complaint, moaning and gossip. Blocking messages from individual email accounts would have been a full-time job, so I came up with an alternative. I hit reply all and wrote a short, and blatantly untrue, email stating that I worked for Fourth Ports and said how useful it was to have an insider's view of what the enemy was up to. I have never since received a single email from the group. Oh, and the Wardy Bay waters remain as they always were. In college there was this girl who was part of my friend group, but I didn't really know her. She seemed nice but apparently somewhat lacking in the common sense department. One time we were hanging out with our friend who was an Italian exchange student, D. She was texting one of her friends in Italy and for some reason I don't remember, Kavina asked to see the messages. I tuned into the conversation just to see absolute shock and confusion on Kavina's face, and she said, "Wait, why do you write to him in Italian?" We were all there like, okay, what is going on here? D explained that as she was Italian and her friend was Italian, that's just how they communicate because in Italy people tend to speak Italian. Kavina then comes out with, "I don't get it. You speak English, so surely it's easier for you to speak to him in English, rather than translate everything to Italian? And here's the kicker, do you understand everything he says to you even though it's not in English? Wow, that's amazing." Bear in mind she wasn't being one of those "you're in, insert country here, so you should speak, language, people." She genuinely didn't understand and she was trying but eventually just gave up like, "This is so confusing, I don't get this at all." I still can't believe this conversation actually happened, or how it happened, but there we are. Tifu by mishearing the Costco lady. My husband and I went to Costco to grab some groceries and usually bring in our own bags. Because of certain world events, we were told at the door that we couldn't bring our bags in. No big deal, Husband runs back to the car to return them and I pull out my membership card to enter the store. A worker approached me with a very small sanitizing wipe, like 2 inches by 2 inches. For context's sake, you know when you are looking for a specific house and you have to turn the music in your car down? For some reason wearing a face mask makes me deaf. I can't explain it. If you know, you know. Anywho, the lady hands me the wipe and I hear, "For your card." So I comply and briefly wipe down my membership card. She looks distraught and emphatically says, "It's for your card." Okay, I think, and wipe it down even better. I'm literally sitting there scrubbing my membership card. She then points at the carts behind her and says, "For your card." It finally clicked for me and I'm sure I turned bright red under my mask. I ran inside without waiting for my husband to come back. DL, "Doctor, I thought employee was asking me to wipe down my membership card. She was actually asking me to wipe down my card." I died inside. Our store actually shut down on March 23rd. We all went back to work on April 29th. For a few days before we closed, people were tipping very generously. When we opened back up, initially, people were still being generous. That really helped because the drivers just weren't getting that many deliveries per shift. I just don't think the regular customers knew we had opened back up. But now, the stiffs are starting again, along with the small tips, and the drivers are still getting less deliveries than before. For a while there, it seemed like every tip was at least 5. I probably got spoiled by that. Stiffs sucked before, but they're even more annoying now, considering that the insiders who answer the phones are deliberately asking the customers if they'd like to pre-tip in order to lessen contact. On top of that, the owner just hired 2 new drivers. Today, we had 6 drivers and barely any deliveries. I did 4 deliveries today. Hopefully, it has something to do with the Memorial Day weekend and will get better. Obviously, warmer weather doesn't really help either. Lots of people like to barbecue during the spring/summer, and I can't blame them. I hope I don't have to find another job. I have a theory on the wild Karen. She was the pretty girl when she was younger. The one that people would give things to for a smile, or someone would just get it for her. Daddy/mommy, boyfriend, sugar daddy, etc. Now, age and her true character have danced across her face. She is no longer the young cutie people hand things to, and it irks her. She can't figure out what happened, so she tries what always worked, being demanding and a little mean with it. Her friends used to laugh at those cutting remarks, right? DL, Dr. Karen got old, and she's mad about it and taking it out on everyone else. First time posting. Please, pardon my grammar and autocorrect. Very short, but it made me smile, and I recently had 9th graders attempt the same thing with similar results, only it went on to discuss the grammar of the lyrics. Background. I work in Tohoku, Japan as an English teacher. If you ever get a chance, please come. It's worth visiting. I love my job, and I'm very good at it. However, kids are kids, and sometimes you get a class that's very authority adverse. This class was one of those and rather stressful. I'm not a cool teacher. I come to school in skirts and dresses, I'm plus-sized, I'm 30, they know I have a 2-year-old, and I'm generally looked at as the mom teacher. This took place last year after the Queen movie came out, and We Will Rock You was extremely popular. These kids had been monsters all year. They caused me to cry more than once, I had used my angry mom voice more than once, and the Japanese teacher T1, was at a loss of what to do. The story. The T1 was trying to teach where do you want to go as the grammar point, and one of the little darlings decided to start the We Will Rock You beat. The rest of the class followed. At first, the T1 tried to talk over it, but the kids just got louder by banging on desks. He looked at me helpless because he didn't know what it was from. I was tired. I was fed up. It was Friday. See, my parents raised me on Cla2O, Styx, Billy Joel, Little River Band, and Queen. I knew this song. I waited for the appropriate beat. I ran through the first verse. I sung the refrain. Here's what they saw. Chubby mom that they're used to seeing with a 2-year-old on her hip, small town, in a long skirt and green sweater with love and flowers embroidered on it, singing the most punk rock song they know at the top of her lungs. Snakes would have been envious of the jaw-dropping. The fallout. Not much happened. I turned the beat into a way for them to chant where do you want to go, and for that class at least, we got through without any more incident. Next week was back to wrestling with the class like normal, but apparently they told all their friends, and so I had to sing it for the 4th and 5th graders the next Thursday. They've graduated, and I'm not at the JHS they went to. It made me laugh, though, and made that day a bit easier. So today was an absolutely glorious day where I decided to put my earphones on and just lie down on my trampoline for a bit. I ended up dozing off and must have been there for an hour or so. When I woke up I spotted my cat chilling near me, so I called her over by saying PSH 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 and lightly slapping my palm beside me. She came prancing over and jumped up beside me. It's important to note that I was wearing jogging trousers. So obviously I reached down to pet the furball, only to distribute a shock that could give a defibrillator a run for its money directly into the back of her head. She absolutely freaked. She jumped backwards yelling and ran away. She hasn't spoken to me since, and won't believe me when I tell her I didn't mean to do it. DL, doctor fell asleep on trampoline, built up an hour of static, gave it to the cat. Our house gets inspected every 3 months by the real estate agent to make sure we're taking good care of the joint, as I'm sure many of your properties are too. Usually this is fine. We don't trash the place and keep it neat and tidy, and always do a thorough deep clean the day before the inspection to make sure everything is shining for the agents when they look it over. With COVID, the inspections went digital. It's super easy. All we had to do was take 4 photos of each room. We didn't even need to deep clean it this time, because it's not like they'll be able to see tiny details like dust in a photo. Easy. Or so I thought. I informed one of my housemates, from here on referred to as Lazy Bones, about this. Sure, he said. I'll send them through, he said. I'll do the bathroom too, he said. The deadline to upload the photos rolls past. The other housemate and myself have cleaned the entire house, which is a large property for just 2 people to do on their own. Took us several hours. Lazy Bones still hasn't even done his room and sure as shoot hasn't touched the bathroom. I asked him again to send the inspection photos to me so I can upload them. Oh, I forgot. I'll do them tomorrow, he said. Tomorrow came and went and still no photos. Mind you, his room is the smallest in the house and can be cleaned in under an hour. A few more days roll by, I ask again and he gives me the I forgot speech again. I roll my eyes. It's now 2 weeks past the deadline. He still hasn't done his room. I tried to talk to him about it last night. I said, have you done the photos for the inspection yet? He said, yeah, I think I have. I should have pressed him further on that. How can you think you've cleaned your room for an inspection? But I was too baffled at the response. I said I'm annoyed that housemate number 1 and I had to do the entire house ourselves and he just said okay. I'm seriously frustrated. The real estate agents are the people that get to decide if we get to stay in this property or not, so appeasing them is in our best interests and Lazy Bones can't even clean a single room. Hello everyone. I hope that you are all having a better day than I am. NGL, it's been pretty crappy, so I figured I would share one of my favorite customer interactions with you all. I currently work in the salad bar portion of a grocery store, when I'm not thrown into another department to cover someone. Basically me job is to make all the fruit and veggie platters, small snacks, and all the salads. One thing to note is that things are made fresh every day, and our expiry date for all of our items are no more than 3 days. Now on to the story, shall we? A few weeks ago I was working away by myself, being particularly awesome, when a gentleman came up and began looking. After a minute of looking he sharply asked, "Do you not have any fruit past the 27? Me, "No sir, I'm afraid I don't." Thinking in my head I just out that out a few hours ago, and beside the Best Buy is the date made. "Sir," scoffs, "well then, never mind." And tosses the fruit back down and semi-storms away. Let me preface, I have worked mine a year in many retail jobs, but this just stunned me for a minute afterwards. How is made today not fresh enough? Anyway, that's it. Keep being awesome, you filthy animal. Smile. Well, I'm currently working as a farmhand for a local sheep farmer. This happened earlier today, when we were marking the lambs. This is done by reading the number on the mother, writing it down and assigning a number to the lambs, then cutting the farmer's mark into their ears. We were about halfway through today's batch, when there was this one sheep that had 2 lambs. I noticed that it has this ping-pong ball-sized patch of skin with no wool and it looked a little like a tumor. So the farmer asked me to check it, and I proceed to pinch it with my gloved hand as I look closer. It almost immediately pops, spraying out pus with the thickness of curry sauce. Naturally, with my face being so close to its flight path, I get a big splash on my forehead and hair. I'm very uncomfortable with some disgusting things, but also not put off by some other things. I'm not uncomfortable with lots of blood, gore and such, but I can't stand maggots, rotten things and pus. Needless to say, I spent over 2 hours in the shower, and have now shaved off my hair. If my scalp was replaceable, I probably would have removed that too. Thank God I got none in my mouth, nostrils and eyes. TL, doctor, I accidentally popped what I thought was a sheep tumor and got sprayed with sheep pus, like a movie scene. Feel horrible. During Christmas, me and my parents went to a store to get some Christmas ornaments, and to give you an idea of how I look at the time, I was wearing a long-sleeve white shirt and a dark blue jacket with no sleeves, and my height was 4'9", also a girl and looked kinda older for my age. While shopping, I asked my mom if I could go look at the Christmas hat. She said okay, and I ran over there and put one on, and I kinda dropped some and went to pick it up. I finished, and then a lady came up to ask me this: "Excuse me, where could I find the gold ornament?" And I didn't want to be rude and say I don't work here, so I showed her where it was and helped her find the one she wants, then said to me, "Thank you, young lady, I'll be sure to tell your manager of how good of employee you are, you're so kind." I smiled and said to her, "No problem, but I don't work here, I'm just very nice." She looked at me and apologized to me for wasting my time. I told her I didn't mind and then left to go to my mom. Then while shopping, I saw the lady coming up to me and my mom, and she told my mom how nice of a girl I am, then left. I know this isn't a Karen story or a crazy one, but this story makes me happy to think about and tell my friends too. Happened a couple of years ago. Didn't think about it until I was searching some old texts on my phone and I thought I'd share. It was Christmas of 2018 and I am someone who likes walnuts and tangerines. Since a certain blue store seemed to be out of walnuts, I instead went to a nearby market, which had a lot. But walnuts by themselves were expensive. However, I just wanted 1 pound. So I settled for a good deal less of my favorite and opted to buy a pound of mixed nuts. 3/pound. Which was fine since it had a lot of others I enjoyed, like hazelnuts to give example. So I go to self-checkout, ring it up, and realize that there wasn't a code to enter. Okay, not a big deal. There wasn't one at the bin, either. I had checked earlier. Okay. Sorry to be a pain, but I call over an employee. She can see my bag of mixed nuts and rings them up for me. 10. It shows on the screen that it weighs a few ounces over a pound. It shouldn't be that much. I correct her. She tells me that's how much walnuts are, and I correct her that I didn't get walnuts. Still less expensive than you're gouging me for. I got mixed nuts that had walnuts in them. A manager sees her getting angry with me and comes over. She asks what's wrong, and I calmly explain as the woman is glaring at me. Then pipes up, retorting that's how much they cost. The manager asks where the barrel of nuts is and I tell her where they were. She leaves. Comes back. Notes that I was rung up wrong and pulls out a calculator to correct the price including the extra weight. The first worker was furiously glaring at me as I had the correct price now. It seems petty, but I left there happy the manager didn't discount anything for me. The fact this price gouging worker got revealed to their manager, who I could tell was going to talk to her about this, made it far better. Though, looking back in 2020, what value did that hold to her? I was at self-checkout. And paying with a card. Also, to anyone wondering, I was trying to recall a weird experience I'd had working customer service that had naturally resurfaced to memory and wanted to find. Which makes this story incredibly ironic. Edit: I'd like to clarify that price of the mixed nuts was roughly 3 per pound, while just walnuts were about 5 to 6 per pound. Also would like to say the mix of nuts were walnuts, hazelnuts, Brazil nuts. There were a couple more but I don't remember their names. Being on pandemic vacation has given me time to think and reflect on my front desk career, and this one story popped into my head, so I thought I would share. A few years back I was working at one of the nicer posh hotels in my area, which provided high-up, big spender guests exclusive perks. One of them were pillowcases with their name on it. When we saw the guest was arriving, we assigned them a room and notified housekeeping, and they made sure the pillowcase was on when they arrived. I always thought it was a pain in the butt, but whatever, it was what it was. One day out of the blue I got a phone call from an older gentleman. He explained that his wife of 50+ years had passed a few months back and asked if we still had his pillowcase. He and his wife would travel together often, so our hotel has 2 pillowcases made with both their names. His wife always loved this extra touch and would joke that even the pillows know their names. He was hoping we would send him the pillowcases so he could have a reminder of his wife. Me holding back tears, trying, but I am sure failing, at staying professional, took down his name and address and said I would talk to housekeeping personally. As soon as I hung up I ran down to their office and told them the story. We all had a boohoo moment and the K-director grabbed them and sent them out that day. We got a handwritten thank you letter from the man about 2 weeks later thanking us for giving him a piece of his wife back. That was such a great memory I carried from that hotel. I still tear up thinking about it. Thanks for reading my sappy memory. Hope everyone is doing well. For starters, I'm 19 meters. Same with my friend in question and her boyfriend, my best friend. The three of us have a tell-all relationship, so I don't often think before I speak. We say whatever whenever and pride ourselves on our improv skills. I was on call with my friend and she was in the living room, her mom adjacent. I've said hello to her mom before but we've never really spoken. Being the friendly me, I was like, hey _mom. What's your name? Mom, Betty. Fake name. Me, oh I like that name. Thanks, now I don't have to call you _mom all the time. Mom, haha, what's your name again? Me, Austin. Mom, like Austin Powers? Me, haha, sure. And then there was a pause, a natural pause but enough of one to make my next phrase feel like its own separate statement. My brain was racing with every single Austin Powers scene it had stored, and on complete impulse I said, do I make you horny baby? In possibly the worst Austin Powers accent that's ever been done. I immediately realized what I said and startled out that was the wrong to use. They both just started laughing uncontrollably, and I was so embarrassed. I was thankful she wasn't offended but boy was it awkward. My best friend, her boyfriend, joined the call just seconds later and we got to tell him the story. DL, doctor, my friend's mom connected my name to Austin Powers, so I asked her if I made her horny, baby. I work at a small-town coffee shop that has managed to adapt and stay busy during COVID-19 by utilizing a window for walk-up service. A regular problematic customer, let's call him TJ, is a typical middle-aged man riddled with toxic masculinity. He often makes female employees and customers uncomfortable with his comments. Lately he's been around a lot, being typical TJ. Today he came to our window and ordered a coffee, cool, nothing out of the ordinary. A co-worker asked him if he would like to tip via our Square register. We normally don't verbally ask customers, but with the current pandemic we are not allowing customers to touch our iPad system. He proceeded to tell her to put 100, and reassured them he wanted to tip that much because he appreciates our hard work and effort and wants to chip in since our business has been a bit slower. Okay, I gave him that and almost have a change of heart about DJ. We both outwardly thank him and he goes on his way. I text my boss about this uncharacteristic interaction with TJ and through their end of the register system she was able to look at the transaction. They noticed that not only was the credit card he used not in his name, but in his boss's name, on their company card. Typical TJ. What a D-bag. The obligatory this didn't happen today but I was thinking about this event and thought I'd share. Maybe a tale of warning? Or simply entertainment. A few years ago, my mum planted grapes in the garden. I know little about horticulture but being in a rather mild-weathered England and the plants being young, the first few batches of bunches were comically tiny. The little things tasted delicious though and I developed a habit of shoving entire bunches in my mouth then puckering up and slowly pulling the stem away, leaving just the sweet, juicy balls of goodness to be gobbled up. The flip up. One day I was at my table concentrating on work and my mom comes in with a plate of the fruits of her labor. Excited, I take a bunch and pop the thing in my mouth. Everything is fine at first as I begin chewing but suddenly I taste this awful bitterness and feel a sharp pain on my tongue. It's as if the bunch bit me back. I pause in shock and confusion and more pain. So in a moment of panic, I spit out the contents and among the chewed up purple, immediately spot the headless body of a juicy, big ol' earwig accompanied by this weird writhing in the slimy purple pile. In my disbelief, it took a while to process what I was looking at but eventually realized the strange writhing was hundreds of earwig babies crawling about on my table. I tuned into my mouth senses again to discover this same scuttling sensation was being replicated inside amongst the bitter taste and sharp pain. I began to frantically blow and flail my tongue in an attempt to remove whatever horrors were residing in my face hole. A moment later, more bug babies were strewn across the table. I had to pull the decapitated earwig head from my tongue as it had latched on with its devilish pincers. Ew. I ran to get water and at this point it dawned on me what was happening so I cried like a baby as I rinsed my mouth in the sink for what felt like an eternity. That taste, which I can only describe as the smell of a stink bug but in taste form, didn't leave me for maybe 30 to 40 minutes. I didn't eat grapes for a good few months after that. Turns out the bunch I picked had been home to the earwig and her kids. Makes sense as they're surrounded by tasty resources and were hidden away from the outside world. Until I ate them. I now always wash all my fruit even if it comes straight from the tree. TLDR, attempted to eat a tiny bunch of grapes in one bite. It happened to be the nest of an earwig and its many buggy babies. I accidentally decapitated the mom as she bit back and got stuck on my tongue and babies crawled inside my mouth. Ew. Important context: I am a 16-year-old boy and last year my English teacher was a female in her mid-50s. Our English class had just finished our analysis of a book in our class, so it was time for the final exam on this section of our studies. Our teacher said that over the course of 2 lessons, we would be given time to write our essay, which would be our mark for this topic. Normally I am a very slow writer and take lots of time conveying my ideas and usually end up needing extra time to finish. Something the teacher was aware of. Our teacher was very nice and would normally allow kids who didn't finish to come in for one lunchtime where they could finish their essays. On the second day of writing the essay I was sick and wasn't at school. This meant I needed to come during lunchtime with all the other kids who didn't finish their essays and finish it then. As I had missed a day and due to my slow writing I was the last one in the room and had taken most of my lunch writing this essay. Considering how far behind everyone else I was, I finished in a pretty good time for me and I was surprised that I didn't need more time to complete it. I finished writing and approached my teacher at the desk to hand my essay. As I am about to do this, she says, "Good job, you finished a lot earlier than you used to," and proceeded to hold out her hand. I assumed she wanted to shake my hand to congratulate me, so I shook hers. She gives me a really weird look and seems surprised with what I have done. I look down and see she is still holding her hand out. At this moment I realized I flipped up. Her hand was just out because she wanted me to hand my essay to her. I quickly hand her my essay, leave the room and walk out feeling really embarrassed. TLDR, finished my essay faster than usual. English teacher was very happy with me and put her hand out. I shook it when all she wanted was my essay. I still believe that someone knows something. And yes, his letter said he was done, but that doesn't mean he was done with his life. They wait for 72 hours. The first hours are so crucial. The video footages were already written over. I still hope he just live his happy life. What do you think? Maybe someone have some other ideas to trace people? Machine Smith went missing from St. George, Utah on September 1, 2015. He was 17 years old and while what he was last seen wearing is unknown, it's believed he was wearing black Nike sneakers with blue soles and green eyelets and accents. At the time of his disappearance, he was 6'4" and weighed approximately 200 pounds. He has blonde hair and blue eyes. While Tracy went to work for the day, Darren remained at home working in the backyard. He was planning on taking Machine out driving upon his son's return home from school. At 3:15 p.m., the school bus dropped off students at the bus stop. However, Machine wasn't among them. Once 3:30 p.m. came around and his son still hadn't returned home, Darren began to worry, but was unable to contact Machine due to having confiscated his son's cell phone the night before. As such, he texted his wife, who assured him Machine was probably just blowing off steam and would return later. After speaking with Darren, Tracy checked her personal email and noticed an email from Machine's school, saying he had been absent the entire day. Worried, Tracy immediately returned home and took a look at her son's room. While the door had been locked, which struck Tracy as strange, nothing else seemed out of the ordinary. Tracy contacted the family's local church, as Machine would sometimes attend youth group meetings on Tuesdays. However, he was not there. When 10 p.m. came around and Machine still hadn't returned home, his parents assumed he had run away and contacted the St. George Police Department to file a missing juvenile report. The deputy who took the report told them he'd keep an eye out for Machine during his patrol that night. First-time posting, currently a EMS dispatcher for a private ambulance company for 3 years now. We take some calls, however, they're usually seizures, psych, and falls. This one? Probably should have been psych, but unfortunately she wasn't the patient. This call happened in my first year, while I was pretty fresh and didn't understand the power of controlling a call. And #X200B. Me, okay, tell me exactly what happened. CLR, yeah, my mom fell in the other room, you know we have her locked in there right now, but yeah she fell and I think she may have hit her head. Me, okay, are you with her now? CLR, well, you see, she has dementia, and we live in a new home, so she is locked in there. You see, we can't have her wandering because of the bears that are around here. Me, have you gone to check on her yet? CLR, no, I can't unlock her door because she will get out and the bears will get her. Me, can you please go check on the patient? CLR, yeah, I think she might have hit her head. It sounded like she hit the end table. That's what woke me up. But even our big dog, insert large dog brand, is afraid to go outside because there are bears here at this new house. Please send the ambulance, but make sure they get in and out quick because the bears will get them. Rinse and repeat for literally every one of the 10 questions involved with a fall. I was essentially working with a third-party caller as she flat out refused to unlock her mother from the room until the imps got there, let alone even go look at her. And #X200B. I kid you not, I heard way more about these bears than I ever got out of her regarding her fallen mother. While I may have wanted to bash my head into the desk repeatedly asking her the questions, now I can have a good belly laugh over it. From what I do remember though, Mom was transported alright, and no EMTs were mauled by the darn bears. The last time anyone saw 31-year-old Randall Randy White was on August 17, 1982. 3 days later, his family reported him missing. According to the report, a family member arrived at Randy's Bloomington, Indiana, home on the afternoon of the 20th to find the front door ajar, and the lock broken. The inside of the usually very tidy home was in complete disarray. Drawers had been dumped out onto the floors. Closets and cabinets had been ransacked and Randy's bed had been flipped over. Perhaps the most peculiar of all, the phone lines had been cut. The only items confirmed to be missing from Randy's home were a pair of hunting rifles and a shotgun. Police found a small amount of marijuana in an ashtray in the living room. Randy had never been arrested, and police do not believe he was selling drugs. Randy's car was also nowhere to be found. Then, 5 days later, Randy's missing vehicle was located on a rural county road, just off of SR 37, roughly 20 miles from his home. The vehicle was abandoned and the license plate was missing. There was no evidence to suggest a struggle had occurred inside of the vehicle. Randy has never been found. I had originally believed that Randy lived alone, and that still may be true, but I noticed on the ISP, Indiana State Police, report that it says the report indicated that the White's house was burglarized and telephone lines cut. The phrase "the White's house" would seem to indicate multiple people with the last name White lived there, but I could find no mention of a wife or any other family living with Randy. However, I did discover that in 1990, a woman named Mary Catherine White had Randy declared legally dead so she could manage his estate. This person could simply be Randy's mother, but I'm not sure. The ISP listings aren't very accurate so it could easily be a typo, but thought it was worth mentioning. ISP. Estate clipping. While I cannot say that I enacted this revenge, I am proud to say that I am directly related to the person who dished it out. My sister, X, was about 3 at the time. I know that this may not seem like revenge, but the look on her face afterwards confirmed that it was. I'd like to point out here that this wasn't a hurt someone kind of revenge but a humiliate them in front of 20 kids plus their parents and siblings revenge. It was gold. So, me, 8 at the time, and X, are at a playground. X is in line for the slide and I'm on a bench eating ice cream next to my parents when we start to hear some of the kids shouting. We look up and this kid has slid down the slide only to climb directly back up it and slide down again, repeating the process to X's annoyance especially, as she was next in line. We'll call this kid Y. Important side note here, this slide wasn't small by any definition of the word, it was angled steeply, it was long, it was high up, though was the slide to win all slides. So X, and the rest of the kids, are getting increasingly fed up with Y's antics until X decides to do something about it. Y was climbing up the slide in a spider-like manner, positioning his feet on the sides of the slide, creating a sort of human tunnel. Well, when Y climbed to the top of the slide to do it again, X slipped straight between him and the slide like a greased bullet and nearly knocked him off balance. Y's face was bright red and the entire line of kids was in tears. It was one of the funniest things I've seen to date. Moral of the story, don't mess with my little sister. And wait your turn please. I worked night audit relief but even before COVID I worked some PM shifts because we were short 2 front desk people so I thought I'd help out until they hired 2 new people. They never did so come busy season, there was no mid-shift to help and I was tired of going back and forth with non-PM, and was overwhelmed with disorganization weddings and groups. I was ready to quit. Then came COVID and I became one of 3 front desk to still have a job and I was back to strictly NA which I love. I have worked few PM shifts but very few and the ones I have I hate because my managers work mainly those shifts and they don't do what needs to be done for front desk. Such as block rooms, switch rooms from dirty to clean, drop their money etc. So it's a mess when I come in but I don't really complain because I see how overwhelmed they are. Now to the dread, We are slowly picking back up, almost to 60%, but are working with less people than when we first cut the staff to a skeleton crew. Prices are very low and we have been getting trash people, and all I hear from the one daytime employee is horror stories when I come to relive at night. Everyone is overwhelmed. I try to fold laundry at night to help the one housekeeper we have. I've stayed an hour late to let my manager get extra sleep, and everyone still working is going above and beyond to keep this place going, but we desperately need to let other staff come back. As now I am mostly spared the craziness, but I still get my share. Someone threw up in our hallway and didn't say anything, underage drinking, fights. And even with all that, I rather work not NPM, which I will have to do for the next 2 weeks. I will be working mostly day shifts starting tomorrow. No house person to help, it will be just me and the crappy guest we seem to be constantly getting because of these cheap prices. So, all front desk employees, please pray for me. I'm really dreading what's to come. My apologies in advance for the formatting, but all I have to post this is my phone, so I work at a fuel center where we are responsible for maintaining the outside as well as the inside, which is a good thing because I really can't stand staying in here staring at the walls. When this happened it was during a slow period, so I was taking advantage of the free time and bouncing between the pumps and the kiosk to get some cleaning done between customers. I had just taken care of a nice elderly man and then bolted 2 lanes away trying to finish a small project. When I look up, which I try to do every 30 seconds or so, I see the elderly man and a new customer standing there. The new customer then looks at me shouting something that I cannot understand and then jams his money into the drawer and slams the lid. It is a slow enough period that I can see him walking to his vehicle, so I know where he went, so I'm able to piece together that at least. Now, to be fair, I'm a 31-year-old female and I've been working in customer service for almost 13 years now. I've had my fair share of rude, screaming, and stubborn customers, and I'm usually able to just give a customer service smile and get them out of there, but to heck with it. I take a then leisurely stroll up to the kiosk with a friendly wave and I'll be right there. I then go inside and gesture for the elderly man to step up to the kiosk because he was polite enough to stand several feet back to wait his turn despite the guy storming off. I then proceeded to refund the elderly man's remaining change, asking him the usual, "Would you like a receipt with that?" and throwing in a "Thank you for your patience" for good measure. All the while this kind man is trying to let me know the other guy stormed off and left his change in the tray. I then use the speaker system, which is loud enough for the storming off customer to hear. "I understand that, sir, and appreciate it, but you were willing to wait here at the kiosk, so I'm going to take care of you first." The gentleman then thanked me and went back to his vehicle. I look up and rude guy is staring at me, gesturing in frustration, basically asking why the gas isn't working yet. I give him a happy "Not a problem, sir, I'm putting it on right now." I know it's not the most clever of revenge, but despite how some people feel, fuel center associates don't have super speed or a magic wand, so it still takes a few seconds to put money on a pump. And if your time is so valuable that you're impatient enough to slam my equipment and storm off, you'll just need to learn to survive a few extra seconds. Side note, I still see this customer on a pretty average basis and he still just grunts his pump number and walks away, but he has not chucked his money in the drawer or slammed the lid to my drawer ever since. Smile. Okay, so, long time lurker, obligatory on mobile. Sorry for formatting. This story isn't mine but belongs to a lady I work with. She's your typical cat lady, can't turn away a stray even though she has a ton already. Her babies stay inside with her. Her daughter came to visit and brought her own child and ended up staying months because she supposedly couldn't afford to leave. During this time the kid, we'll call her Jill, slept on the couch. While my coworker, who we'll call Amy, was making breakfast one morning, she heard a commotion and one of her favorite little kitties, one she raised from infancy and that she absolutely adores, came tearing through the house soaked. Jill is laughing hysterically, having thrown a whole pitcher of water on the poor cat. Amy is livid. She tells her daughter, Jill's mother, to address the situation. The child's mother says it's just a cat, who cares? This is where the petty revenge comes in. Mind you, Amy works night shift. She also lives mere minutes from our job. So she gives it a couple of weeks. Leaves work on break one night, sneaks into the house. Proceeds to dump a bucket of water on Jill while she's asleep on the couch, then disappears before anyone realizes she was home. When her daughter tells her about it the next morning, she says, "Oh, well, it's an old house. The ceiling leaks sometimes." I might not have gotten to see Jill waking up in a panic, but the smugness on Amy's face while she recounted this story to me was 100% priceless. Edit: Jill was 14 at the time. Definitely old enough to know better. Edit 2, title error. My phone is ridiculous and autocorrects correct words into other words. Throughout the whole story it kept automatically switching cat to car and I had to go through and fix them all. Didn't even think about the title, oh my bad. It's supposed to be revenge for the cat. Me and my family were going on a small family trip. I finally managed to connect my burden of a phone to the car, and asked them if they were okay with me playing some songs on the remaining 15 minutes of the car ride. No one objected, but it turns out that my brother only agreed to it because he was having one of his moods and felt like insulting my music taste. My music taste is quite mixed, but there is definitely an overlap with his. He didn't care. He just wanted to feel superior, I suppose. The problem for him was that he couldn't just remark that he didn't like the song. He had to make it seem like it's an objective fact that my music taste is bad. He insulted the first song that played on the shuffle, saying that no one listens to shit like this. Unfortunately, that was a song that my sister also liked, so she shut him down pretty quickly. Then he went on to trying to make remarks about the music genres, only he doesn't apparently know anything about those. I played a disco song and he said that no one wants to listen to my rockabilly music. The rest of the family, me included, burst into laughter. He didn't find it funny at all. This went on for a while until finally I played a very obscure rock song, and my brother complained about it being too mainstream. At that point I asked him if he knows what mainstream means, and fortunately we were already home, because he was fuming. He stormed away and refused to talk to anyone in the family after that up until the point at which I'm writing this. Obligatory this wasn't today but gradually over time. I used to cut weight for wrestling back in the day, meaning I ate very little and was almost always dehydrated in order to make weight. This made my lips perpetually dry, so my solution was chapstick. Little did I know the effects of abusing chapstick. If you use it too often, your lips stop producing moisture on their own. So after at least 4 years of cutting weight, I just always had it with me. Well, I quickly noticed when I didn't have it that my anxiety would spike, and had no idea I had conditioned myself to be quelled by the sweet Vaseline-type concoction. So I pulled up to my hunting camp at around 9 p.m., which is about 15 miles from the nearest podunk store, and everything closes super early. I lay everything out and get ready for a nice long weekend of relaxation. Well, I go to reach in my pocket for the magical ointment and horror struck, it's not there. It must have fallen out of pocket at the gas station a couple hours back on the drive. The one store around is closed and there is a Walmart 1 hour away. So I decided to tough it out for the night, and my god, it was unbearable how dry my lips were. I'm going mad trying to take my mind of this. I am up all night, now sleep deprived, so I can't go hunting. The little corner store 15 miles away opened at 6 a.m. and I was in the parking lot at 5:45. Now I try not to use it very often, but you know I still always keep that thing on me. They say meth, not even once, but I am here to spread awareness about chapstick addiction. TLDR, got addicted to chapstick, lost sleep over it, lost a whole day of hunting. So this happened when I was around 10, just starting to stay home by myself. There was this lady going around mine and other nearby neighborhoods, and she was a door-to-door salesman, selling children's books. Anyways, the thing is, she would always ask to use your bathroom. If you let her, she would not leave your house. Like you could beg and bribe and threaten and she wouldn't leave. Anyways, the news flew around pretty quick, and our neighborhood put out pictures of her so the inhabitants would know who she was. One day, my mom had left and I was home in my own. My mom had always told me not to open the door for anyone, but I would always look and see who it was, you know, if they were dropping off a package or whatnot. So this particular day, the children's book lady knocked on my door. My 10-year-old self was petrified, and I called my mom first thing. She knocked a few times, but didn't leave. She peered in the windows by my front door, and walked around my house for a little bit. Right when I was about to call the cops, she left. I've never been more scared in my life. So creepy, children's book lady, let's not meet. Bartender at a local pizza joint. My buddy came in after a long day dealing with his 2 sick little girls. He tells me a story from today about the littlest. She's screaming for him from the bathroom. She states she's been waiting for 60 years for him. All she wanted was a cheese pizza from our place. Since they were sick, he went with something more appropriate for upset stomachs. But you can guarantee I got him a gift certificate for a cheese pizza for her when she's better. Nice to have good customers to even out the bad ones, lol. Happened yesterday evening. 4 weeks ago we found out, surprisingly, that my wife was pregnant. We didn't plan it and weren't expecting to be parents yet, so it was quite a shock. Anyway, we had accepted what was going to happen and both thought that it would actually be nice to have a child. But then last week we found out that the fetus had no heartbeat and that she had a miscarriage. Fast forward to yesterday when the fetus had left her body and we were deciding what to watch. Cue the flip up. My idiot brain must have been on an autopilot and didn't think through what I was about to say. Scrolling through movies, I looked at my wife and said, "Wouldn't it be fun to watch some children's movie?" She looked at me and asked if I was a sick, emotionless moron. Took me good 5 seconds to get why it was so inappropriate. Luckily I was forgiven quickly. DL, Dr. Wife had a miscarriage. I suggested we watch some children's movies. I worked in housekeeping in a hotel for months up until this past week. I'm now 35 weeks pregnant. I was scheduled to work 5+ days a week, with 20+ rooms to myself. I came into work recently, because I was on the schedule, and I could barely walk. I couldn't bend my back and my ankles were hugely swollen. I had been in L&D the night before to stop contractions. We didn't have many rooms, but 5 housekeepers in-house. Everyone was almost begging my manager to send me home, as we had too many housekeepers for the amount of rooms. Now, I'm huge at this point in pregnancy. I can't bend too far forward in general. My manager and I, discussed a couple weeks ago that she didn't want me cleaning bathtubs, so I was to have another housekeeper come clean my bathtubs. No biggie, I was fine with that. Well, the day before I quit I had went to find another HK to help with a bathtub. Said manager stopped us in the hall and asked what we were doing socializing on the clock. We explained that she was going to clean a bathtub for me and would go right back to her rooms. She yelled at me and said that if I can't do my job, I need to quit so that she can hire someone who's willing to work. I explained that it wasn't that I wasn't willing to work, rather that's one small task that I myself struggle with accomplishing. She didn't care. She continued yelling at me. Now, I've always hated being yelled at, so I spent the rest of my shift crying while cleaning my rooms. I got home from work, still crying. My boyfriend became extremely upset as I told him what had happened. We decided that it's in the best interest of our child that I just be done, as it's a lot of emotional trouble as well as physical. So I gave my manager her wish, and I went in and handed in my scrubs and quit. She seemed sympathetic, said she understood, was sad to see me go, and for me to come talk to her after I was released from maternity leave. Fast forward to today, another HK at said hotel was talking to this manager, while recording the conversation to send to me. She asked if I would be back after baby. The manager told her that I was lazy and a crybaby so she would never consider hiring me back. I'm glad I quit. I feel like I dodged a bullet. I'm not sure that I'll ever be able to convince myself to work in housekeeping again. I was playing with my daughter today and got a sudden burst of love come over me. I started hugging and squeezing her and kissing her face. She wiggled and pushed and laughed trying to get away as 3-year-olds do, which only made my cute aggression spike even more. I grabbed her cute little face between my hands, apparently flanged my lips like a breastfeeding baby and planted an extremely affectionate wet one right on her forehead. I let her go and noticed there was a little red hickey on her forehead. I am extremely thankful we are in self-isolation so people don't wonder about her face. What's worse, is my husband woke up from his nap and asked her what happened and she said Mama licked my head. I explained through tears of laughter. DL. Doctor, I gave my daughter an aggressive kiss and accidentally left a hickey on her forehead. So interesting day so far and it's only 12:45. I decided to help my dad clean out the pool because it's almost summertime and the pool isn't that dirty. There is about 3 inches of water at the bottom with some leaves. Our plan was to use a shock vacuum to clean out the majority of the leaves and then scrub the bottom. We put the shock vacuum beside the pool on a table with a power cord right beside and then use the tube inside to pool. We were smart to not put the shop vacuum in the pool because it's electric. As I was vacuuming the leaves I tugged on the system and the cord fell right in. My legs and feet got a massive static feeling, then it went straight up my body to where I couldn't even stand. I fell right over into the water, shaking horribly. My dad pulled the cord out, screaming if I was alright, but I couldn't even say anything. I just sat down in the water for at least 3 minutes until I could get back up. I got out of the pool and my dad kept offering to take me to the hospital, but I said I was alright and just needed to sit down for a second. Now here I am typing this. Amazing. DL. Doctor, I was careless with a shop vacuum and almost died in a dirty pool. I've been noticing lately that my roommate has been overriding the automatic programming on the thermostat. And #X200B. It's summer here in Kansas, so we have kept the AC to cool to 68°F and shut off. That is honestly already pretty cold. And #X200B. This roommate puts it at 60 F and every time I walk out of my room goddarn it feels like a freezer and due to this, the AC is on 24/7, a house in Kansas will never reach 60 F in 105 F summer days. And #X200B. We don't even pay for utilities, but I feel like such a glutton just wasting energy like this, it's obnoxious. Not to mention, I know the landlord, he's a friend and this is just his second home, he's not a rich dude. And #X200B. Anyone else feel that is way too cold for a house? So this happened last night? My so was watching one of her soaps on her phone. Both of us are quarantined and watch stuff on our own as we get very few breaks in between our WFH schedule. I was lying on the bed next to her and wasn't doing anything in particular, just watch her while she watched her show. Out of sheer boredom, I started ad-libbing phrases/random obscenities into the on-screen dialogues and or commenting on the actors' appearances, so on and so forth. Now, I must add that my so finds it hilarious when I do this usually and doesn't mind me playing the fool. As per usual, she started laughing as I went on and seeing her laugh, I was egged on to keep up my act. On a particular hilarious comment, she just lost it and started laughing her head off to the point where she paused the video. This is where things started to take a downturn. Now, I must add here that my so is asthmatic and needs a pump regularly to help her with it. It can sometimes overwhelm her where she has trouble breathing and has to take a couple pumps to come back to normal. So, in a fit of laughter, my so initially started to have trouble breathing and got up from her position lying on her back while watching the video. She kept coughing and trying to breathe but couldn't. It started to get so bad that she started dry heaving and ran to the toilet where she puked her guts out. Meanwhile, I ran to the other room to get her pump which she took and then somewhat came to normal. Luckily, she calmed down soon enough and saw the humor in the situation. Now I'm too afraid to make her laugh. Doctor, made my asthmatic so laugh to the point where she had a minor attack and puked herself. This happened earlier today and I'm still cringing with embarrassment. I was leaving for the park walk my dog Jerry, today, and I've been kind of slobbing it recently in my apartment because, you know, lockdown, so the laundry's been piling up. It was pretty warm and clear out so I quickly chucked on a t-shirt and sneakers, and a pair of tearaway shorts. They're like basketball shorts but with poppers down the side so you can rip them off. I used to wrestle and wore them over the singlets to and from practice, but now I mainly wear them around the house. Today though I couldn't be bothered to find some proper shorts so I thought I'd just roll with it. First mistake. The park's pretty busy. Jerry's excited to be out, jumping around and stuff. He goes up and greets a group of like 5 or 6 guys and girls my age, like mid-20s, with a bike and we're like chatting casually a bit about him. Anyway, I've got this like knotted rope toy that I chuck around and play tug of war with Jerry. It's in my pocket kind of hanging out. Second mistake. While I'm distracted, yep, you guessed it, good old Jerry decided to make a leap for it. If I'd just let him try and grab the toy he probably would have dropped and waited patiently for me to play but, third mistake, I instinctively try to grab it as he jumps up and I feel him tug my shorts. In that split second, I twist around, don't get a proper grip and /pop. Before I have time to react, Jerry zooms off with his beloved toy and, in horror, I watch my shorts fly along with them. And that's not even the worst part. As I mentioned, laundry-wise I'm not in the greatest situation at the moment. I look down, praying for a pair of Calvins, or even some boxers, but deep down knowing what I put on this morning. The most shockingly old and baggy pair of tighty-whities, like years old. The kind you would never wear on a date. God knows why I even have them. From way back in the day when I needed support down there playing tennis or something. After a split second of it happening, this group burst out laughing. The girls shriek as the shorts flew off and the guys are laughing their asses off. The next minute, trying to call back Jerry, who's absolutely loving all the noise and attention, while trying to laugh it off, extremely aware that I've gone crimson red, and trying casually to pull down my t-shirt and hide my shameful choice of underwear, while running across a busy park with everybody staring and pointing. Oh God. After what felt like hours, probably more like a minute, one of the girls managed to grab Jerry and he angelically dropped his toy for her. I scrambled to get my dignity back on, burning with embarrassment, and hot-footed it back home as quickly as I could. Lucky there's a pandemic on because I'm never ever going outside again. And #X200B. TLDR, walked my dog in the park, he ripped my shorts off trying to play, whole park saw my most embarrassing underwear. Obligatory. This was about 6 years ago. My great aunt, now deceased, was an awesome lady. Super cool and funny and lived through a lot of shit. She was the crazy spinster of the family and I loved her. She lived in CO and my immediate family lived in WA at the time. She was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer and had a really poor prognosis. She was still feeling pretty good between treatments and decided to come visit my family to get one last trip/set of hugs in. We had a great few days sightseeing around my hometown. It was almost like she wasn't sick. She did mention that the chemo was making her hair fall out but she still had a fairly normal-looking pixie cut. The last night we were having dinner at my house and she was sitting across from me at the table. I was kind of spacing out and just eating when we made eye contact across the table and she picked something brown off her shirt that was about an inch long. She made dramatic eye contact with me and picked it off her shirt with "Oh boy would you look at this eyebrows." It was done almost comedically. My first thought was that she dropped food on her shirt and was laughing at herself. I laughed reflexively to commiserate and she gave me the subtlest of odd looks and kept talking as though nothing happened. It was then that I realized with horror that it was a small tuft of hair that fell out because she was dying of cancer and I laughed. We had a perfectly nice rest of the trip and she died shortly thereafter. I still physically shudder when I think of this. DL, doctor, my great aunt's hair fell out due to chemo during dinner and I thought it was food and I laughed at her. I suck.